And welcome back to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Thanks for joining us. Tonight, tonight's topic is going to be, again, revisiting the world of the Fae, and we've discussed it previously on another show or two. I have to tell you, and it continues to be a problem, is to try to research any paranormal activity or phenomenon. The amount of, and please forgive me, because I always say I like to keep an open mind and I don't like to trash other people's opinions and beliefs, but the amount of garbage out there that you run into, and God bless all these people for really reaching out and wanting to believe in something, but sometimes the things that they post as their proof is just, it's almost heartbreaking. And by that I don't mean that I sit in judgment, that well, I guess I am. There's nothing I can say that to the contrary. It's researching Bigfoot, researching the Fae, researching ghosts, researching anything. Whenever it comes to photographs, there's so many photographs out there that are clearly real leaps of faith in order to see anything of value on there. And it's unfortunate. And what's going on, I think, in a lot of the cases is there's a psychological condition that we all have. It's called Pareidolia, or I think is how it's pronounced. If I'm not pronouncing that right, forgive me, but you get to deal with my sick fog and my inability to enunciate clearly. But Pareidolia is basically or Pareidolia, or however it's pronounced, is basically the need or the desire for our conscious mind to find familiar shapes and familiar things in what would otherwise be a chaos. In other words, when you look up at the sky and you see the turtle in the clouds, or the smiling face in the trees, or whatever, it's our mind's willingness to do that. And unfortunately, the field is absolutely littered with so many photos and pictures and things of, oh, look at the smiling face in the tree. And you look and they zoom in and there's this blurry, just short of a Rorschach ink blot test, and these people are interpreting it to be something that maybe it is for them, and God bless them for believing in it. And I don't want to disparage the beliefs, but whenever you present evidence, unfortunately, there's no harder situation than in the paranormal to present evidence that has to be absolutely clear. It has to be compelling, because the naysayers and the people out there that can't wrap their heads around this grab onto that so quickly and say, look, this is what the people believe in. I mean, this cluster of leaves is clearly a cluster of leaves, but they say they see Bigfoot in there. And it does something to discredit the field and the serious researchers that are out there. And again, I'm kind of torn on it. Marco Magic says Pareidolia is a psychological phenomenon involving a stimulus, an image or a sound, wherein the mind perceives a familiar pattern of something where none actually exists. Thank you, Marco. I appreciate that. And the amount of photos being offered that are clearly some form of pareidolia is absolutely mind-boggling. And again, I love the fact that people have an open mind, and that they want to reach out and they want to have these experiences. But I think it almost borders on the wishful thinking, because the experiences that I've had, and I've explained them before. For instance, when I saw an orb, it wasn't some nebulous little milky, almost transparent blob. It was like a little sun in front of my face. It was just there. And I have seen what I would consider very, very legitimate videos and photos of orbs, but oftentimes they are lens flares or something else. And it's certainly not compelling. But I just wanted to get that off my chest, because I think, again, in the forums of people that are out there really researching and really trying to bring these things into the mainstream consciousness, it's frustrating because there are so many fluffy pieces out there, and and it's hard to create any kind of serious inquiry into a field that's so disparate and littered with viewpoints and wishful thinking. So anyway, that's my soapbox, and I'm sorry, I don't usually do that, and it's probably just 'cause I'm not feeling well. But anyway, tonight's show, I wanted to discuss the Fae and go over that, and you're gonna have to forgive me in advance because it's just been really hard for me to focus too heavily on this tonight's show, and it's really no problem of your guys's, but I may have seemed disjointed and stuff, and if I am, I'm really sorry. But I did run through a bunch of sites, and I actually found a really compelling case to this. Now, I don't know what it is about the world of the Fae that absolutely intrigues and compels me, and it's not something that I've experienced personally that I can remember anyway. I've seen many, many weird things in my life, and perhaps I have seen something that could have been this, but I don't. None of the experiences that I can remember are matching of this. But it's hard for us to get our minds around the fact that there could be these other realities around us and intertwining with our reality and popping in and out. But I did find an explanation on how, of all places, Yahoo Answers, and the person asked the question on Yahoo Answers, does anybody believe in the fairies, that they're real? I do, and I know my experiences are real, but this person just put it out there. And I really like this person's explanation and answer. And I just want to read it for you because I think it's really a very thought-provoking explanation. It says, "My truth is that the Fae are very real. In this incredible world of diversity where physics and metaphysics have begun to combine, science is finally realizing the nature of our multiverse is composed entirely of energy, each vibrating at a different rate. They noted in numerous experiments that particles separated by millions of miles are aware of and communicate with each other." And for those of you that might not know what that means, there's a metaphysical theory of quantum entanglement, and essentially it says that if you take, I believe, an atom from, if you take a part of an atom and stretch it across the entire galaxy, and you vibrated that part of the atom, the rest of the atom that's still on the other side of the galaxy will actually move at the same time. So for some reason, the actual space distance doesn't matter because that particle will still consider itself whole and will move as such. And that's my layman's basement explanation of it. I'm sure it's far more amazing and fantastic than that. But anyway, I'll continue on. This is a new physics, and when they begin to look more closely at consciousness, enormous strides forward will be made in our understanding. This is scientific fact, and to dispute this shows a person's ignorance. Everything is energy and is conscious to some extent. Science has also established that there are at least 11 distinct dimensions. These are not locations, but rather realms that vibrate at different rates and often overlay each other. Having said all this, some people are more inclined to connect with these entities that live in these realms, including elementals, the category fairies fall under. Most likely you enjoy nature and animal interaction and take some time to show appreciation in your own way. So the explanation continues after that, but I just thought that was a really eloquent way of saying, look, it's possible. And the person took the time to bring in very real research and very real scientific fact and theories and make a compelling argument for the possibility. So I really thought that was fantastic. So that was my first explanation. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Now, I don't know what it is about this this topic that actually absolutely compels me, but I think as much as we continue to keep these things in our modern day folklore, shows that there's at least an interest that resonates in us to the idea of this fantastical realms existing within our realms and things that may be right there, right beyond right around the corner of our understanding or perception, and may interact with us on levels that we don't understand, forming whatever. I mean, most people believe that the Fae are, most of the Fae are nature and elemental, as that person had said, but they are, they are the entities that take care of nature and to process that energy and to do those things. So I think it's a fantastic concept, and I just love it. And again, I can't explain why. It just resonates with me. So you have to forgive me if this topic isn't quite what you'd want to hear tonight. But again, you didn't write, you didn't call. I'm covering what I want. So anyway, let's get into a couple of ideas or a couple of things. And if you'd like to see and I hate to call out a site and I hate to call out a site and disparage it, because again, I love the idea that they're looking into this and creating a site that people can come together and share their experiences and whatever. But the collection of photos that I found on this site were absolutely pretty much horrified me, because it's just such stretches of the imagination to see these as proof. And unfortunately, I wish there were clear pictures of things, but I couldn't find much value in it. But the site is, just to share it with you, is fairytastic.co.uk and /fairyencounters.html. And again, I apologize. I don't mean to bash them. I love what they're trying to do. I'm not really impressed with what they've done so far. I wanted to read some of these experiences that people had, because I think they're unique and interesting. I've had experiences, and I would say our nature spirits or fairies happen, and they happen in different ways. I live in I got to move my Skype thing. I live in a very large wooded area, and we have quite a number of trees and wild plants. I see very tiny bright lights around plants, lights that move very quickly up and down diagonally and are only around the plants. It's almost like a dance, and there are so many of them. I see them also above the tops of plants and in the open fields if we're passing by in the car. Another time I was sitting outside and it was nighttime. I was looking out over the balcony, feet up on the railing, just relaxing in the chair and enjoying the night. Out of the corner of my right eye, I saw what I guess we would call an elf or possibly gnome. It was at a time when I was going through some stuff, and his appearance then was especially meaningful. When I tried to look directly at him, he was gone. Other times I don't see them with my physical outward vision like I did above, but I see them in my inner vision, mind's eye, whatever you call it. I'll be working with my birds near the patio doors and see one or two out in the backyard. We had a ring of mushrooms out in the back a number of years ago now, a fairy ring. I know the scientific explanation for that is it's a fungus, but it does make me wonder if there's also a nature spirit activity that brings on the fungus or fairy ring. It can be both. One explanation doesn't really exclude the other. I also see fairy now superimposed on things in my mind's eye, only way I can explain it. And finally, I work with the fairies oracle. Oh, hold on. I got a cough bad. Excuse me a moment. I'm going to mute my mic. The things that come out of me now. Oof. He works with the Fairy Oracles by Brian Frond, and it's been a really positive experience the past few years. Another person had an experience that only lasted a few seconds. I've got an old wooden treasure chest in my bedroom, and I was drifting off to sleep, and though my physical eyes were closed, I could suddenly see my whole bedroom. Clearly, an electric leprechaun was very interested in the treasure chest. He had a luminous orange hair, he was wearing green, and was so nosy and curious about the chest. Laugh out loud. I opened my physical eyes and couldn't see him at all. Yeah, could be. I mean, I believe we're all latently or very actively psychic. Some people more than others, depending on their awareness, but perhaps he was seeing into that other dimension. Would you believe I just drank cough syrup too? Jeez. At another counter when I was nearly asleep, a branch, quite a large one, was shaken in my face, sort of a woo-hoo. I felt and saw this branch, and then whilst my eyes were still closed, I saw a being having a nose around the kitchen. She was definitely looking for mischief. She was about 2 feet tall, blue-green color. She had arms behind her back, had her head held up high, and the only way I can explain her mannerisms is that if I had a really expensive treasured ornament in the kitchen with a do not touch sign, she definitely would have touched it. So many people seem to write off orbs as dust. You don't need a special camera to take photos. If you ever take any of plants, waterfalls, etc., Picturel and I are always happy to examine them. I would probably disagree with that. I think that most orbs captured in photos are not legitimate. And again, I don't mean to be a naysayer or negative about it. It's just I do photography as a sideline, and I know how lens flares work, and I've taken many photos out in a mist or snow. And if you use a flash, you'll be surrounded by orbs. And you see those pictures online of people like, oh my God, look at all the loved ones around you. It's like, no, that was just snow. That was really just snow in a flash. So this is another person. I've had an encounter with the fairy elementals when it was 15 years ago now. It was a midsummer celebration. I was 15 and had a party with some friends, and they stayed overnight, and we slept in a caravan at the bottom of our fields. There was and still is a bubbling brook, which backs onto the farmers' fields. It was very quiet, and I think magical. The trees hang over the brook, and it is quite protected from the everyday world of humans. I've not personally physically seen fairies, but I have heard them on that night. It was a midsummer's night, 21st of June. It must be a special time of the year for them, and the fairies were having a party at the brook at the bottom of the fields where I used to live. We could hear what sounded like medieval music and fairies making merriment in particular, I could hear high-pitched singing, which was very distinctive and unexplainable, sounding like nothing else I've ever heard before. This is what someone else on here has described as the way in which they communicate. I assume it would be the fairy elementals associated with water. The sky was very clear that night, and the bright full moon lit up the fields. I didn't want to venture too close so as not to scare them away. My friend and I were both sat in the caravan around midnight, listening to the eerie, high-pitched singing of fairies and their music, which seemed to carry on the breeze. There was no other explanation other than the fairies. It was a special memory in my mind now. So, I mean, that's really cool. So they do believe that the schools of thought are that they, as elementals, they are responsible for different things. I don't know if we've ever mentioned that before, but there are the fairies of the water, fairies of the earth, which would be like the gnomes or the dwarves, and fairies of the sky, fairies of fire. So there are, as elementals, they are responsible or participate within those different categories, is how I understand it. Again, I don't pretend to be an expert. I'm just an enthusiast. I saw a fairy face to face on May 31st, 2008. It was the day after a huge family argument, and I was not expecting this encounter that morning. I was rather depressed, but afterwards left the room very elated and happy. And I'll finish reading that on the other side of the break. Please feel free to call in, email, let me know what you think, and visit the chat board. Talk to you soon. In just a minute. And welcome back. I think I've coughed everything up for the time being now, so hopefully I won't have a bunch of dead spots in my show anymore through the end of it. Hope you're enjoying the show. Again, if you get a chance, call in 866-37-TRUTH. That's 866-378-7884. At the beginning of the show, I was going to also go into some news. Had some help from Lucky on Truth Frequency News, which was awesome. She pointed out a couple stories that I thought were really cool. If you get a chance, I want you to check out this video on YouTube. It's this is the title. It's by posters now you know, Nowouknow. It's titled Strange Alien Entity or Robot Seen near a gas station in Peru. The video is pretty wild. I don't know what the hell is going on there, but something is definitely going on. Excuse me. Strange alien or entity or robot seen near a gas station in Peru. Check it out. It's the security camera showing the gas pumps, and something appears just off of the pavement in the grass, and looks to be floating just out there, and people are seeing it, so they're approaching it as well, and it seems to move off. It's very compelling, though. I'm not sure what it is. It's not really, really clear, but it's clearly something I don't recognize ever seeing before, so it could be very legitimate. Anyway, check it out if you get a chance. Also, in news, proud of East Texas, Smith County Jail has ghosts. The Smith County, Texas, has an old jail that's now been purchased and has been a hotel and then a jail and then law offices now, and it was purchased by an attorney there. And some paranormal researchers have made some discoveries there, going through getting great EVPs and finding some evidence of an active haunting there. So I guess they're really proud of it in East Texas. And congratulations to you guys in Smith County. And now you'll have every paranormal group in the nation knocking on your door. So anyway, back to the story. This is a face-to-face encounter. So this person actually physically saw the entity, the being, and I think that's pretty cool. Oh, time to mute. Just a sec. Just a quick maintenance cough. Nothing too drastic. Sorry. So sorry about that. I can't even do a decent Homer right now. Oh, yeah. So, again, I saw a fairy face-to-face back on May 31st, 2008. It was the day after a huge family argument, and I was not expecting this encounter that morning. I was rather depressed, but afterwards left the room feeling elated and happy. That previous month, after chatting with 2 online Native American friends who have had fairy experiences since childhood, I was hoping I could also connect with these beings. So I asked God to allow me to meet one if they existed. I forgot that prayer, and then that morning, while wistfully looking through my wild, messed up hair in the morning sunlight, I suddenly noticed a small, delicate face looking up at me through my section of my hair. She had total empathy reflected in her totally dark chocolate brown eyes. I could tell she was feeling my sadness from the night before. I have dark blonde hair, and this fairy was light cocoa brown, with flawless soft skin. She had totally dark chocolate brown eyes with no irises as human eyes have. Her eyes were tilted up some and wide set. She had a high forehead and a high cheekbone, also a delicate nose and chin and lips. Her hair appeared to be pulled up off her face, and she had very delicate bone structure, and she appeared thin and lithe, but not bony. Lithe as in L-I-T-H-E, not L-I-F-E, as it may sound through my nose, but not bony. I sensed a royalty and dignity about her, yet also an innocence and purity. She was very peaceful and calm. Since then, realized I was able to see her. She then realized I was able to see her, and she did get this expression on her face like, uh-oh, she sees me. I probably should disappear now. And she did. But I still felt her presence there. I was awestruck. And hold on. And welcome back. As I pull myself off the floor from a coughing fit. Didn't quite get that drastic, but geez. I think I'm talking more than I have in a few days, and so it's rattling my lungs a little bit. Again, my apologies. I maybe should have done the show pre-recorded or done it as a repeat, but again, it's such a highlight for me, so please bear with me. So anyway, but I was awestruck, having never really had such a solid confirmation before that these beings truly do exist. I scoured Barnes & Noble for books on valid experiences, but could only come up with the fantasy, cutesy fairy books. I did manage to find Brian Found's fairy painting books, and discovered that the fairy I saw looked very similar to Brian Frown's pixie paintings. Only she was not as wiry and much more softer. less wild looking and more refined. His pixies were male pixies, and cute as they were, looked like fun-loving gangster types. Laugh out loud. She was beautiful. I still feel a bond with her today. So that was a really solid experience for her, and apparently it occurred when she needed it the most, which is really kind of cool. I don't know that fairies are believed to be caretaker kind of spirits as far as for people, but it's nice to know that those experiences are out there, and more power to her. I'm glad she was able to have that experience. It's very powerful when a belief turns into a fact, and I've had that experience myself. As I've explained on the show, when I've had the experiences I've had, it definitely changes the entire paradigm of your life, and at least opens your mind to the possibilities that are out there. And then you realize that the possibilities are literally infinite. And that's exciting. And that's the world I love. That's the world that I'm excited to be a part of. Is I'm not excited to be a part of a mundane world that's all mapped and figured out, and it's all 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, and then you get weekends to have fun, and then you go back again and just repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. That to me is madness. That to me is insanity. But a world that has mystery and has magic and has the unknown, and it to me is exciting. And that's the world that I want to participate in and believe in. So I think that's, again, it's my personal experience, my personal beliefs, but I think that we're all that way. And I think that's part of what's going on in the world now with what appears to be the insanity, that's going on, is this, that people are growing, people are expanding, our minds are expanding, and we need the unknown in our life again. We need the searching and the discovery and the adventure. And I think that, we've been kind of pounded into this mold of a corporate America and other nations as well. I don't pretend that this is only an American problem. It's in the world. I think we're all getting itchy. We're all getting, unsatisfied, and we need to find that adventure in our lives again. And that's why I think that ghost hunting and Bigfoot hunting and all of that stuff is on the rise, because people need to touch that unknown again, to live in that world that they knew as a child. And I think that's very powerful. So I wanted to also touch on this other story. This is from reddit.com. The truth is there. The truth is here. Comments. Have you ever had a real life fairy encounter? And the person starts out the thread. I thought it was a really good story. And I wonder if people have these experiences, if they exist, what people perceive as very 3D and very solid and very right in front of their face. If those people have tapped into something that the people around them haven't, or maybe aren't aware of, in a lot of cases, and it's very true in spirit situations and hauntings, that children are the most sensitive of people to experience hauntings long before the adults will, because they will perceive these entities in almost as physical beings. They will have discussions with people that aren't there, and I think some cases it's imaginary friends, but in other cases, when the kitchen furniture starts moving too, then your kid is probably talking to somebody. And I think that in this story that I'm about to read, the person was younger, and he had this very vivid experience, but his mom, who was watching him, didn't see the same thing he did. And so I'll read that and let you be the judge. I have super vivid memory when I was really young, like 6 to 8 years old. I lived on Long Island, and my parents took me and my little brother to the beach all the time. I grew up around oceans and water, so my parents trusted me to run around the shore without too much supervision, as long as I didn't swim where I couldn't touch the bottom. I remember I was collecting shells and rocks on the bay while my mom was feeding my little brother, and I climbed around these huge brown rocks that were halfway in the water. There was a boy who looked a little older than me sitting in the middle of the rocks. I didn't really think it was weird because I was like 7, and I just asked him what he was doing. He didn't say anything, but he smiled and picked up a few shells from the water and put them in my bucket. When he came more into the light, he looked super pale, almost light blue, and his hair looked like green, clumpy seaweed. His eyes were huge and black, but I was taught it's rude to comment on what people look like, so I didn't say anything. I just hopped off the rocks and into the shallow water, but he followed me. He said something to me, but it wasn't in English, and he just kept going into the deeper water and bringing me cool shells. My mom called for me to leave, and I said bye to the kid and thanks for the shells and walked up the shore to my mom. I told her about the boy, but she said she didn't see anyone, even though she was watching me. I don't know. I did have pretty active imagination as a kid, but I remember this so vividly. I'm really into mythology now as an adult and can't help but think that maybe he was some sort of water fairy or mer person or something, or maybe just a weird boy who was good at swimming and needed a hairbrush. My mom not seeing him could mean that I imagined him, or that the whole thing about fairies only letting children see them. And so that's the mysterious part of the encounter, is that the child could see them, but the adult couldn't. And is that by design of the entity itself that it can choose this, or is that just that the child's perception is so much more open than the adults, and they are able to perceive these things more clearly, as in the case of hauntings and spirits and such? And that's really curious. It's really got me wondering. And I don't know that there's an answer, and I'm only putting it out there as food for thought. I don't expect an answer because I don't know that there is one, but definitely a curiosity. But it's a thread that continues to repeat through a lot of paranormal research, is that children are picking up these things so much earlier. And so I have to refer to the biblical line, and I don't mean to get all Christian on you here. It's not my intent, but there is a line in the Bible, lest you be like children, then you shall inherit the kingdom, or something like that. I don't know it verbatim anymore, but there is something about that childlike view of the world that makes things perhaps more accessible and more discernible, that we as adults forget. And I don't know, I've thought about this a lot, and I don't know if it's the world, that it's maybe the stresses and the worries that make us forget. Is it the fact that something physically changes as we age and we lose that perception that came so naturally as a child? Those are the things that I wonder about, because I think if we could find the keys to that perception again, that the world would open wide for us, and we could really make some amazing discoveries. There's a lot of little brief encounters as well. Somebody was I was riding around with my brother one night, and out on the main highway quite a distance away, we saw something short and bipedal cross the road. It was illuminated by streetlights on the outskirts of town. We were too far away to really see what it was, but I remember its gait seemed really unnatural or unnerving. Now, someone below him says, I saw something similar at the university late at night. It was bipedal, squat, and short. Me and some others were freaking out because it looked so weird. Then it flew away, and we realized it was a couple of owls just walking around. Yeah, well, they might be shapeshifters too. You never know. And I'm saying that tongue in cheek, but there's a lot of legends about shapeshifting and such. So, in fact, I can't tell you the story verbatim, but it was an acquaintance of mine online who's part of a Bigfoot group. He was out looking, doing some research in an area that he had familiarity with, and I think he was up in Canada, up in the Canadian Rockies, I believe, and he was up there and in all by himself up in the old logging road, camping in his pickup truck, which had a topper on the back and such, and he was sitting on the back tailgate, and he noticed this little person suddenly just cross the road about 20 feet away from him. It was dark, but it was a moonlit night. You could see it very clearly. And he said, I jumped off the tailgate, ran over there, and it ran underneath a tree. And he said, and I got there, and suddenly there was only this ferret there that was growling at me. He said, but I know that was not a ferret. It was something walking upright with clothes on, and then suddenly was a ferret. And, he wasn't there for that. He was there for looking for Bigfoot and for, relic hominid type of experiences. And this was something that he wasn't prepared for. But he's adamant. I mean, he wasn't drinking or anything. He was adamant that this was a real experience that he had. And so perhaps along with the unknown abilities is the ability to shapeshift. And I don't know how to wrap my head around that completely, but there's Native American legends are full of shapeshifting, and even our European legends are full of shapeshifting and stories of lycanthropes becoming human or wolf. And so there is a history of legends in all of our cultures that does this, and including African cultures as well. So for that many cultures to have stories of these things that happen, there must be some basis of experience that these come from, that they stem from. And perhaps it's just real clever sleight of hand some people were managing to do centuries before people knew what magic was, but, like illusions, I should say. But perhaps there is something to it. And so I guess that's part of keeping the open mind, is that if there is a legend, if there is a story, if there's a history of a phenomenon, and it seems to traverse geographical boundaries, then what is it? Is it just a bunch of fanciful imaginations that exist in a lot of Stone Age cultures that work their way into our modern times, or Bronze Age cultures, whatever? Or is there some basis in fact that these things could have occurred and could occur? And because we're in this modern world full of science and technology, does not negate the fact that we have so much to learn and discover about our world and the possibilities of it. So maybe there's so much possible that we can't even begin to comprehend. So there was this one story that I'm trying to find. I don't know that these things exist. I don't know that they don't exist, but I do know that possibilities are there, and the fact that people are having these experiences. Now, the ones where their eyes are closed and they're having these visions does not negate the experience out of hand, because I think that we exist more multidimensionally than we believe. We think we're here in this body and that's it. But I think our spirit traverses dimensions as well, and that our energy can be in more than one place. And so perhaps they are able to have spiritual sight. And I think if you had listened to Chris and Cherie's show Beyond the Veil just last hour before mine started, they were talking about remote viewing. And in cases of remote viewing, and there's been plenty of studies into it, and there's actually many compelling scientific facts that have come out of it, in that these people are definitely beating chance that are doing remote viewing. They're actually seeing things, and they're reporting things that they couldn't possibly know. None of them are 100%, of course, but we as people are never 100% at anything, so that doesn't surprise me. But these people that remote view are closing their eyes, and they are experiencing these things. They are projecting their consciousness out into the world to experience these things. So the fact that those things happen, that they're able to see things, and they're actually able to validate that those things they were seeing, is very compelling to say that, we have the ability to do that. We have that latent ability within us to push our consciousness out and be, able to traverse space and perhaps even time. I know I saw a show, and I don't mean to divert into a different topic, but about remote viewing of a person. I don't remember what the name of the show was. I think it might have been Monsters and Mysteries in America or whatever, but it was talking about the remote viewing program, and the guy ended up being told to go to a certain coordinates at a certain date and experience it. And what he did was he saw himself in a room with people that looked like people, but they were a little bit different. And it was a very different room, and they were taller than him. And the man was basically putting his daughter into this protective kind of bed. And he knew that he could feel that what was going on was the civilization was ending. And he was able to mind talk with the guy that he viewed and said, "Is there anything I can do?" And the guy looked at him and said, "No, there's nothing you can do." And what he found out was the coordinates that he was given were allegedly from Mars. Now, I think there's enough compelling information out there that there possibly is or has been something going on Mars prior to it becoming a dead planet, that there possibly is not even dead now, that there's water flowing on Mars. There are what could be trees growing around some of these watered spots. They're not quite sure, not being open about it, whichever it is. But there's plenty of things that have been found on the rover cameras that are at least questionable, that they could be some form of ruin of prior technology or whatever. So again, I just think it's important to hang on to the idea that this is a multiverse, as that person said. It's a multiverse of overlapping energies vibrating at different frequencies. And in fact, most people believe that time is just different frequencies of vibration. So perhaps peering back and forth and across and through space is just a matter of changing your consciousness, that you can tune in and become a part of those things. So food for thought anyway. And I know that goes a little bit away from our initial topic of the Fae, but I think it all really does overlap. And that's a really cute picture of a bunch of meerkats in the chat room. Oh, I like that. As Shane in the chat is posting pictures of meerkats in time-space fields, apparently. But I hope you all have found some value in this. And again, I really apologize for my health and my coughing fits. And I hope you have enjoyed the show nonetheless. I know I'm probably sounding like crap, and I probably did not deliver the kind of show that I usually try to deliver, but I always love being here with you guys, and I always love sharing these stories and sharing my thoughts on these things. And I really hope that you find the time to write in to the Paranormal Portal for you at gmail.com, or call into the show when we're having it and let us know what you think. Join the chat, become a part of that discussion. That's a really cool picture. All that cough medicine's making me just zone on it. Thanks a lot. But again, thanks again for joining us on the show, and please become a part of it. I'd love to hear your experiences. If you have a show topic that you'd like me to cover, please email. Let me know. I would love to cover it and love to hear your experiences as well. Love you all. Be good to each other. Take care. And I'm going to go take some cold medicine and go to sleep. Thanks again.